Hi, I'm Ricky Fort and welcome to the Real Estate 101 podcast. Join me as I lift the lid on the real estate industry and share some great stories from behind the scenes. Like and subscribe and enjoy this episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Real Estate 101 with your host, Ricky Fort from Geelong Real Estate Co. and some absolute real estate royalty here today. Nicole Jacobs, welcome.
Thanks, Ricky. Pleased to be here.
An absolute bio for you. So obviously started as a licensed real estate agent, an author of an amazing book, which we'll chat about, how to buy and sell your home with confidence, a speaker and a regular guest on Talkback Radio, TV, and obviously well known for your appearances on The Block. It's going to be a fun episode.
Yes, indeed. Action-packed.
So yeah, obviously welcome. I probably just want to start with like some background on yourself. Obviously, everyone probably knows a little bit about you from just your whereabouts, but I guess probably just start with way back, like where you come from and stuff like that.
Wow, let's go way back. Okay, so what I will let you know is I am a country girl.
Yeah.
I was born in Beaufort.
Yep.
I won't bore you with the whole story from Beaufort to now.
Not a heap happens in Beaufort, but yeah, got you.
But given that you're Geelong real estate, I thought I would just like get that commonality out there. So way back, where do I go? I'll go with start at the end of school. So I had a gap year, went overseas and worked at a school over there. But I finished an undergraduate in teaching, phys ed and biology. So qualified secondary teacher, went through in the retail space. So worked in the management program at Woolworths, or Safeway as it was known back then. I didn't go into teaching, but because I was working as a checkout chick or checkout operator back in the day, the general manager asked me if I'd like to join the company full time and do their management course. So I did that. Then I moved into the pharmaceutical industry, which a lot of the PE graduates in my group had gone into. It was a natural science health field to go into. I'm going to sound really old now because I've had lots of different things that I've done. But so I went into pharmaceuticals. While I was there, I always had this desire that whatever I'm doing, I do to the utmost of whatever it is and be as qualified as possible, which I think you absolutely resonate with. And so while I was there, I did a marketing postgrad at Monash Uni, which allowed me then to move to Sydney and work in the marketing field of women's health, which was very exciting. And then my boyfriend at the time, Zach, who's now my husband, was relocated to San Francisco. So off I went to San Francisco, and that is where I started my journey with real estate, learning how to buy and sell foreclosed properties, and just fell in love with that segment of the market.
There you go. That's something I didn't know. Obviously, the San Francisco side of things. I think the schooling part probably doesn't surprise me because so much of what you do as a buyer or as a vendor advocate is about education. So that totally makes sense, and I think that really suits your personality style, and that's something obviously you've gone full circle and you've gone back to. Tell us about obviously the San Francisco start.
So San Francisco was the .com era, so it was quite an amazing time to be over there. We got ourselves in with some beautiful expats, so just being able to just...
Who's talking in the background?
Sorry?
Who's talking in the background? Have you got a puppy?
Yes, I do.
We need to bring him on screen, but anyway, sorry, I cut you off. Keep going.
So San Francisco was a great time, a very exciting sort of, America is all about, if someone's doing well, everyone wants to know how and they share it. It's so different to Australia. If somebody's doing well in Australia, we tend to go, wow, they're a bit of a tall poppy, or they think a bit too much of themselves. Whereas in America, they're happy to share their success because they want everybody to be successful,
Yep.
but they're also, happy for people that are successful.
Yep.
And I found that a huge eye-opener and incredibly just exhilarating, really. It's a great market. It's a huge market.
Yep.
San Francisco is very forward-thinking, although a few did ask how we got there. When we said a plane, they actually thought we'd come by boat or, every now and again get somebody that really doesn't know how far Australia is.
So you come back to Australia, as I said, you're a fully licensed agent. So where did your property journey start in Australia?
So Australia started, of course, with just the realization of what I wanted to do. I decided I love people and I love property. So the natural extension of that is to be a real estate agent. So I went and got my agent's rep. The lecturer that took that actually offered me a job at the end of the course, and Sandy Bartfeld. And so that began my very first job in Elwood in Melbourne, just listing and selling property with him. He had been in the industry for a very long time. So I had an amazing mentor to really, teach me the ropes, everything from if they're painting a fence or, there's a skip out the front, they might want to knock on the door.
Yep.
And an important one, which was never drive your car into their driveway.
Good one.
When you're going to see them to list.
Yeah, good work. Great.
Arrogance.
Absolute, some great pointers. And I guess you can be a little bit sympathetic. I think an ex-real estate agent would make a great advocate because I guess you understand the struggles that the selling agent has as well, just how hard it is to get a listing, how hard it is to potentially nurture a vendor into a position to accept an offer that's potentially less than what they're initially thinking. So I think that's why you've got such a great reputation, is you've got respect from the selling agents. I guess what's one way that you go about like building relationships and potentially not having favourites in the industry and just treating everyone equally?
Look, it's a great question because, of course, as an advocate, you deal with everybody. You deal with so my customers are you, the real estate selling agent.
Yep.
They're also my clients that are buying their properties. So it's really important that I think the most successful people are the people that are able to identify the style that person offers. So some people are drivers, other people are very
driver. What's that? Is that like the Herman brain dominance theory?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Which I did back in my time as a pharmaceutical rep, where I really identified who I was.
Yep.
So I'm a driver, but I'm also very left brain, just like I would arrive at a doctor's surgery and be like, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? But I couldn't get through to those that were sitting there with charts and what have you. And then I realized if I can adapt to the style of the person I'm speaking with, then I'm actually able to listen better and I'm able to speak with them in a really good conversation the way they want to accept the information. So I've taken that forward in everything that I do. So as I said before, the most successful people can adapt to any personality that they're speaking with.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important because you can often miss a lot of cues,
yep.
both verbal and non-verbal cues, where somebody wants to wrap up the conversation quickly and they're looking at their watch or they're looking around and they're fidgeting. You've got to be able to pick up on that, whether you're a sales agent or, a buyer's advocate. So, or whether you're just anybody, if somebody wants to actually cut a conversation, you need to know that that's what they need to do, and that's okay.
I've certainly been to, over my time, like listing appointments with different real estate agents, and you can see they've got their pitch and it's really polished, but it's potentially it's a one size fits all pitch, and they go in and they want to go through their 23 points, and you've got someone that's just a creative, or they've got that yellow dominance, and they're just not interested in that. They want to build a relationship. They want to build rapport. It's not about the facts and figures or whatever. So it's a really great one. We'll come back to that because I think that ties in really well to a question I had about Danny Wallace. But I think I'm really keen to hear about how you obviously got tied into the block, like how that first opportunity came up.
So originally, I have a really strong desire that you make things happen.
Yep.
If you sit back to make things happen, they don't happen. You know, if you just sit back and let life go along its merry way, then you're really relying on luck. But if you want something, then you go out and you make it happen. So with the block, I actually saw Frank on the block and thought, I wonder how Frank gets clients for the block. And I thought I should be able to offer my service to people that don't want to be on TV or that actually want a really good service. So my whole premise of going on the block was to offer what I do for people that are buying on essentially a very national platform, very exposed. So I spoke with my great mentor, Marcus Peters, and he then reached out to a couple of agents that were on the block and said, look, if Nicole would like to, represent anybody that, doesn't have representation. And so that's how it started. And then I just went around and met all of the agents that were selling on the block and just said, look, if anybody is either overseas or interstate, they can't be here, or they're just a little bit nervous.
Yep.
I'd love to offer my services so that they know exactly where I think the property sits in the market. Because, of course, again, when you've got such a high profile group of properties selling, it's very hard to work out where the block factor is. And are they overpaying? My whole mantra is about buying the right property at the right price.
Yep.
So if I can establish some sort of rapport with these people, first of all, and make sure that they're doing it for the right reason and that it's the right property, then I can also give them the service that I have, which is to find out whether it's, what it's worth and do they want to move forward. So that's how it all came about.
The block factor is an interesting one. What percentage do you feel like is a premium for a block property?
Well, of course,
is there a rough rule of thumb of 5% or 10% overs usually, or?
Yeah, at least, but they're so unique because they come with all of the furniture. So we have to factor all of that in.
Yep.
And then they've got incredible depreciation schedules.
Yep.
So the depreciation schedules really do attract a lot of very savvy investors,
yep.
hence Danny Wallace.
Yep.
But also a lot of the clients that I've represented over the time, which are my clients, they're astute accountants. They're accountants that have incredibly wealthy people on their books that need, the depreciation schedule.
Yep.
Obviously, they have to have the finances to buy it, but they're really unique from that respect.
Yep. How many block properties have you bought so far?
13.
Is that all? Jesus,
yeah,
that's incredible. How many seasons all up has there been?
In the show, there's been, they're up to the 20th, I think.
Yep. I was going to say it's almost one every series. That's what it feels like, but that's incredible. What's the most? Have you bought more than one in a series?
Yes, I bought 3 in one series. I only thought I would buy 2 that series, or went there to buy 2. One of them, it was at the Port Melbourne soap factory.
Yep.
One of them was struggling, and I'd taken, again, a really astute investor through it, and that happened to be his wife's favourite. And I was saying to Greville and to Frank, guys, get on the phone. This is incredibly good buying. We knew where it's at. And they're like, oh, like this. And then I looked to my crew and went, that is, what am I doing? I should be on the phone too. So I raced off and jumped on the phone to my buyer and explained what it was happening. Had an agreement between the producers and the legal department because, of course, he wasn't there. And we signed all the paperwork so that I could represent him and do all the right things. And we ended up buying it.
That's incredible. So
it was a rush of adrenaline.
3 in one day. Who's your favourite auctioneer to buy from?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I guess because there's 2 sides to the auctioneer. There's obviously one that's a great performer. I guess you don't want someone to do too well because you've got the buyer's best interest in heart, and obviously you'd like to buy it as cheap as possible. But I guess I'll rephrase the question. Who's your best auctioneer to watch? Who do you think's got the nicest voice and the best charisma? And
Oh, well, Tom Panos is pretty charismatic.
Yeah, just
Damien
a little bit.
Cooley, I do really like Damien, even though he's frenetic. I like him because I've worked him out.
Yeah.
So very early on, when Damien used to auction, I realized that his whole way, and as an advocate, I've got to watch lots of auctioneers and work out
The
how
cues
they
and
work
yeah.
and how they draw the money from the crowd. And with Damien, I used him as a real test subject, if you like. I don't even know if
I
Damien
think
knows.
no. Well, he's the ultimate professional. I think he's a great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he's in your top two or whatever, because I think subconsciously those cues of when he walks over and picks up the hammer, and he is incredible. And there's so much more to it than just being charismatic. It's the subconscious things that he plants within the crowd.
He's able to really, like, just the nodding and the
Yep.
and the speed at which he does it, and then he commands the bids, at 50, and I'm like, hang on, the last one was 5, why would I give you 50? And he's like, oh,
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, yeah. It looks like,
Uh,
from what I've seen on the show, you two have got a good relationship.
Look, I really respect him because he's so professional.
Yep.
And he's, like me, I'm there to get the property for the best price possible for my clients. He's there representing the vendor,
Of course.
which is Channel 9 at the end of the day, but it's also the contestants.
Yep.
So, that healthy respect and that professionalism
Yep.
is, I think, incredibly important, whether it's on TV or whether it's in the street or in a boardroom.
Speaking of Damien and potentially how auctioneers handle you and other buyers, obviously one of the questions I was keen to ask is how you have worked with characters like Danny Wallace on the show. That's so Danny Wallace. How does that impact your strategy, and how, because obviously the buyer's advocate's also subconsciously trying to manipulate's the wrong word, but obviously set the pace of the auction and do their own things that they can add value. So how does working with someone like that, what happens? It looks like a nightmare.
Look, it's not. Danny, he's a really, as you said, interesting character. I believe he's incredibly intelligent, and he knows what he's doing. He has a portfolio bigger than probably anybody in Victoria, probably Australia. He's got a massive portfolio. And he enjoys the whole, drama of it all. But at the end of the day, I think respect is important because you can't underestimate Danny. He has an
I've
incredible
seen some auctioneers
ability.
not do it well. They potentially don't know how to handle him, and it's not about naming names. That show's not about that. But there's been some people who haven't handled him well, and I think that's cost the vendor. As you said, it's probably Channel 9, but also it's the contestants. And you think that's how important relationships are and getting to know people, because you've left money on the table there.
I think it comes back to what we discussed before, which is some auctioneers get to the block and they do what they do every day. They haven't taken into account who their audience is on the day at the block. And the block auctions are either fast and frenetic or they're slow and strategic. So knowing who's in your audience, knowing that Danny is probably going to be there, you have to adjust. You really have to make sure, like I have to. A lot of my clients are like, but we don't want to bid in the Danny market, which is what we call it, because he has the capacity beyond most people to buy whatever he wants. But Danny is, I think Danny has bought over the years where maybe he thought myself or Frank or Greville had someone with greater capacity, but we fell just short. And while we had real buyers, real families that really wanted to buy them, he's gotten caught up in it as well. And he's bid again. And then we're like, we're out. And he's like, oh, well, I've just bought it, and I'll just add it to my portfolio, which sometimes is annoying for me because Raunchy Court, I had 3 beautiful families that wanted to buy and they had really good capacity. But because the auction got out of hand with competition of egos, they were then wiped out of the competition to be able to buy the home that they wanted to bring their kids up in, which was, for me, I think, that's quite devastating.
Yeah, that's really hard. Talk about devastation. I guess with the block in the last series, I guess I've spoken to quite a few other contestants like Dale Vine and things like that, and there's been circumstances where real estate agents have been really direct with the contestants around what they think is likely going to happen on the show. Obviously, the producers, portray it a certain way. But I guess, did you see that failure kind of coming with the last series, and that obviously what the properties were worth as opposed to what they were expected to retail for potentially wasn't going to align?
It's a really good question, because we have, not just we have the market in the country, which 6 months before was booming. I mean, the agents down there or up there, they were selling before they'd even been listed on the market. And then all of a sudden, you've got 5 properties, and the block is always 5 properties going head to head on the same day. It's always incredibly difficult.
Yep.
So when you've got that, and you've got the land, which were, there were lots of very different things in contracts for all of them, depending on the creeks and the way they ran and what you could do with them. Plus, the established gardens weren't there yet. So you had to give a vision for your client that all of those trees there, once they've grown up, buying now, you've got the ability to watch that grow, plus the value of the property grow. And then add in, I guess what we thought it was worth. And then it just stalled. You had the first one that went ballistic, and I couldn't believe it. It was well above.
Do you feel like you say that every year, though? You'd think, Jesus, like every year I go in with expectations, and then the block factor does its thing.
Yeah. So the block factor is what I call sometimes just a lot of ego.
Yep.
It's not just the fact that it's a national TV program, it's ego. So when we get, I won't say exactly how I describe it, but, you get a couple of egos in a room that really want to beat each other. There's no stopping them, especially if they've got the capacity to do that. So for them, it's a sport. For others that are there to really buy and live in them, it's their hard-earned cash. Not that the others aren't hard-earned, but
it's a different thing though when you're buying for sport, as you said, versus like, I want to raise my family here.
Yeah. So I think that we all felt quite deflated after that.
Yeah. How many on the day? Was it just the one that sold on the day? Last series?
Yeah. Under auction conditions and falling of the hammer, yes.
Yep.
Then we had House One sold after. For House One, sold as well. Yep. So there were 2 that sold under the hammer. House 2 then sold after to Danny. And then we had the 2 that really took some time to sell, although Adrian did buy House 3 around some controversy. About a week later, and the media died down after he bought that. My argument would be, why didn't he buy it on the day?
I remember just watching that unfold and thinking, God, how hard for the contestants. You've put so much into it. You put your lives on hold, your family, like you've given up so much. Obviously, parents away from their kids, guys and girls away from their businesses and things like that. So contestants give up a lot too. And I remember watching, there was one couple last series that I won't name names, but I remember watching them begging the auction to stop because they were getting close to the reserve and that sort of thing. And I just thought, I think the general punter doesn't understand the difference between a block auction versus reality and what's happening in real life, and what a reserve means, as opposed to like the expectations of the customer. And it's so different, isn't it? Because in real life, you're certainly not begging for the bidding to stop. Like there's definitely that pass-in strategy where, you can potentially, as a real estate agent, try and create a fear of loss, and there's someone else that's subject to finance, come to X today and you've got it. Like I completely understand that, but I remember watching that person begging for the bidding to stop and being like, that's so the wrong strategy. Like you're not the actual vendor, the vendor's Channel 9. That's all tied up in that. But and then it turned out that they didn't even get what the bidding, or it might have taken 3 months, and they got what the bidding got on the day. And I thought, well, there you go. That's actually a better reflection of what happens in real life.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, we just come back to the instructions from the vendor to the auctioneer was, if you get close to it, pass it in because we'll negotiate later. But again, the auctioneers got into their same old, and they just kept going. And it's like watching a car crash in slow motion because they're going. And it's like they were told to stop. I just didn't get it. We don't know the reserves until the day you start to work out. And a lot of the reserves on different series are different.
As a buyer, you're not told until the day of, yeah.
We don't know the reserve, full stop. And so they can be different.
Yep.
We didn't know whether they'd be different across the 5 properties, given all of the different nuances that each provided.
I wasn't sure whether maybe Channel 9 would, there'd be different kind of, not rules, but whether the reserves would be disclosed, so to help you generate interest with buyers and things like that. Well, that's interesting.
No, we have, it's run exactly as you would a normal campaign. So we get the statement of information. So we really have to then work out, again, what that block factor is.
Yep.
I'm working out how many people am I going to be up against, how many advocates will I be up against, just who the auctioneer is again, who's representing who.
Do the real estate agents, are they able to be honest with you around how many expected parties that they think they're going to have, or is it still them kind of withholding information to help you, to essentially help the vendor? Is there more communication? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if there's not, they're stupid because, with all respect, because at the end of the day, their duty of care is to the vendor and the contestants. If they don't know who's going to be in the room, then I think it's already failed.
Yep.
So you can't just rely on the advocates that are there usually every year, and you can't just rely on Danny turning up.
Yep.
So you've got to know who there is. Dave Wood, who's been on the block for, longer than I have, we have a really good relationship, and we always sort of have a really good chat at the start. He tends to be, and he's not on it this series, he tends to be the father of the agents to be able to go, okay, this is how it runs, this is what we've got to do, etc. And I always like to, start with him and work my way through the agents to see who knows what's going on, who's got who, so that I can really represent my clients to the best ability possible.
Yeah. With the block auctions, you've said, because in a normal auction, obviously, I guess it's similar. They can go for, 1 minute to however long. What are the breaks actually like when, the vendor goes and seeks further instructions and stuff like that? It looks pretty awkward and everyone's like jammed in this tiny room and it looks horrible. Is it like that in real life, or is it?
Yeah, it is. So obviously it's a condensed version, which is why it's quite intense on the TV. But if I need longer, I get longer.
Yeah.
So if I need to speak to a client, because last series I had a client driving from Melbourne there, and I just said to the producers, I need a bit extra time because when they get here, I need your lawyers to speak to them and for you to understand where their situation is as far as the contract goes.
Yep.
Because they want as many people in the room that can bid as possible. So we just wait.
So it's not like a traditional auction where on a Saturday, which you've done, you got to jump in the car and run around and do different things. But like auction day, is it a Saturday? Is it like 1 at 10, 1 at 11, 1 at 12, or is it a bit more fluid than that?
Yeah, it's usually a Saturday, and then it goes to air on the Sunday. So we're all under a media embargo. It runs smoothly the way it's been told it's going to go.
Yep.
Last year, of course, there was a lot of time between. They had 2 crews setting up each alternate so that you could get there and it would start.
Yep.
Contracts need to be signed from the one before. And if you're buying for multiple clients, they can't start until you've signed the contracts for your client in that house, and then move over to the next house, and then they set up, and then they go again. So they really want to make sure that every auction is run as smoothly and as well as possible for each contestant, so that you're not feeling like we've got a race on this because there's a time. Because while in TV, time is money. they need it to go, like the soap factory, for instance, in Port Melbourne, I was standing for 7 hours. So from the start to the very end of me signing my last contract, 7 hours I stood.
It's incredible.
The fact that I had silk pants on and I didn't actually increase them. But, it was a very long day, but it was like that because everybody has to have their time and have it properly, played out.
I've always wondered, is the auction in the same room or do they move houses?
They move houses.
So is that extra production crew or does everyone was it already set up or do they have to grab everything and run to each house?
Sometimes it's extra production crew.
And
it
sounds fun.
Others, like when it's in the apartment.
Can I come with you to the next one?
Yeah, it's very it is TV. So a lot of people, lights, camera, action is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people that think they're going to bid, when this all happens and the lights go on and it is real,
intimidating.
They completely freak out and they don't even open their mouth. And the agents, they were real buyers.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Because they just didn't. They just froze.
I guess from you representing a customer, you don't mind. The less competition, the better. You're like, stand back. I've got this.
Natural. In fact, that adrenaline that you get on the street or in the boardroom, you get exactly there.
Yeah.
But
do you do it for the adrenaline? Do you still love it?
I love representing people so that they're not stooged.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's really important, even with the block, that they know why they're buying it and they're not just buying it
to say they bought a block house.
Yeah. I mean, if they're buying it just because of that, as long as they know that, that's fine.
And you're happy to represent that. You're there to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Everybody's different and everybody's motivation to buy is different.
Yeah.
As long as we've discovered that and everyone's okay with that.
What's the favourite house you've bought, whether it be on the block or anywhere?
Probably a couple. I love a period home.
Yep.
So to buy a beautiful big Edwardian, which I did for clients in Brighton. But it doesn't matter whether it's a big house or a small house. It's the feeling you get.
Size matters. We want the bigger the better. Everyone wants a bigger house. Come on.
Yeah. So if we're going to go big, then I would say Brighton in Coal Street for clients. Just an amazing, huge home, really great land, tennis court, pool. Just
what sort of price point are we talking?
Around the 10.
Yeah. What's the highest purchase price you've had that you can disclose? Circa, I think they say.
Circa somewhere between 10 and 15.
It's a healthy amount of money. Tell me about a career low light. Like surely something's just gone horribly wrong. Whether it be in your real estate sales days or just anything.
Wow. Okay, it's a really
you might have blocked them out.
Yeah, look, I tend to, without sounding, like I don't want to answer the question because there's obviously career highlights and career lows where I've probably made the wrong decision business-wise, not a customer decision.
Yep.
Just on a business front.
Yep.
In what I'm doing and which direction I'm going.
Yep.
But I think the important thing from those is that with everything in life, you learn something along the way, and it's the learnings from each journey that maybe didn't go the way you wanted it to, that brings you back to where, you want to be, but also gives you that extra something to move forward. So,
Cool. So no spicy like transactional ones where, contracts have gone awry or like just something, or you've gone over budget and like got carried away or nothing. Obviously, I know you're the ultimate professional and there's not going to be anything too recently.
One cannot spend money they have not been given.
Yeah, wow.
Big tip. And I've never done that.
Yeah. What about a favorite customer or anything like that, whether they be a celebrity or obviously you're representing a lot of high net worth individuals, but I assume you also represent families and mum and dads and people that have just been referred to you?
Look, I do love it when one party calls me in from a family and the other sits there and says, we don't need a buyer's advocate. We don't need you. And then the other party's going, yes, we do. We really need her help. And at the end of the transaction, it's the other party going, oh my God,
look what you've
we so needed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that for me, doesn't matter whether they're famous or they're the people around the corner. It's the journey that I get to take with these families and these individuals that is what gives me goosebumps. And that's why I love what I do.
You're obviously super passionate about what you do, and that's why I had to have you on the show. And everyone that I speak to in the industry speaks so highly of you, and all the contestants I've spoken to on the block, they all love it and hope you're obviously going to buy one of their properties. Before I let you go, any hot tips for this year? Anyone's houses that you're really liking the look of, and that you on the block this is obviously, and that you see maybe doing well on the day, or you hope that?
Actually, you may not see me on the block this year.
Okay.
It's in Hampton East, and I don't tend to buy in Hampton East. But if I get a call from someone that wants me to represent them,
what sort of prices are we looking at this year?
Sorry,
what sort of prices do you think we're going to be looking at this year?
I think they're going to be looking the sort of high 2s into the 3s. Which, in that pocket, they'll be, right up there as far as prices go, although they were purchased at a very high price point. So, I think one of them was purchased around 3.5. So now that it's had the big zhuzh and the reno, you'd be thinking.
Do you think the block takes that into consideration, or they obviously make money through other avenues? People think that it's a profit and loss perspective per house, but obviously for the block, there's other factors, obviously advertising and sponsorship and things like that.
Advertising is where they get their money.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's interesting when they've had to pay 3.5 to get someone up and out of a family home that potentially they didn't want to sell. So from a cost perspective, it's probably not a super profitable endeavor from that perspective. They don't make any money on the houses. Yeah. The quality, I'm always amazed at the quality, and obviously from everyone that I've spoken to, that the guys really do build out a house in 8 weeks or however many weeks it is that they renovate them. It's one after the other, and it's incredible, and it's nice to see in the show, because they probably address some concerns in the show better with Keith and Dan, kind of micromanaging the quality and making sure it's there, because obviously as a buyer's advocate, you'd hate to recommend someone purchase something that isn't the quality that, you know what I mean, that they're not going to be happy with long term. What do you think your ratio is of investors to occupiers as well that you've bought for on the block?
I would say 70% investors and 30% owner occupier. Yeah,
obviously just with the depreciation schedules and all the work they do around that, they just make sense financially.
Yeah, they make a lot of sense financially. I have bought for a few people that started as investors living overseas, and they've got them in their portfolio, and they may all come back to them when they come back to Australia. But by and large, investors are a huge number.
Righto. Well, we'll keep an eye out for you on the series this year. Obviously, if anyone's got a cool 2 or 3 million, obviously feel free to reach out. But we're obviously so thankful. Obviously, there's nothing in it for you to come in on the show. It's purely a generosity thing. So we're so thankful, and you're such a beautiful person. We've loved chatting to you, and I just can't be more thankful for your time. And wish you all the success in the future.
Thanks, Ricky.
Hope to see you on telly again soon.
Down to Geelong.
We've got to get you into some of our real estate down here. Obviously, I know. That style of property that you like we've got some beautiful streets in Newtown, like Laurel Bank, Virginia, Austin, Clark, and they've got some things that would definitely compete on a pound for pound perspective with Brighton and Hampton, and obviously at a much more affordable price. So if you're ever looking for anyone that's price sensitive, obviously send them our way. So, but again, thank you for coming on the show. You're an absolute sweetheart, and we just can't be more thankful.
We'll
see you soon.
So much.
Thank you.